Welcome to the class, dear students. We are currently dealing with Unit 3 of International Business. And in Unit 3, we are studying different institutions which have in some way or the other affected or furthered the international business in the last 50 years or 70 years. Two very most important institutions which have been covered till now are IMF and World Bank. These institutions actually came into existence from Bretton Woods Conference, which we are aware by right now. We have studied how they have been functioning, how they have affected international business, whether they have helped only developed countries or developing countries, or what the reforms have taken place in them over the past 60, 70 years. So, we have studied two major institutions which were the result of major effort by Western countries, especially US. Now with changing scenario, in last 70 years, we have seen that Asian countries like China and India and South American country like Brazil, another very important country, Russia, and similarly, many other countries like South Korea and similar other countries have rapidly progressed and increased their economic might in the last 60 to 70 years. We are also aware, after studying of IMF and World Bank, that even after making major reforms in these two institutions, we see that United States of America, UK, these powers, Western powers, are exerting undue influence over IMF and World Bank, because of which the voice of developing countries like India, China, Brazil, and similarly other countries is not being heard in international forum like IMF and World Bank. So it became very important for developing countries to think that even after lobbying and even after making so much effort, there have not been major reforms in institutions in last 60 to 70 years. Therefore, there came a point where these developing countries started thinking to have their own institutions, financial institutions, which will be very instrumental in developing of these economies. So because of this thinking and because of the futile efforts to reform IMF and World Bank, there came a point where we got an institution which was AIIB and NDB, and these two institutions will be studying in this lecture. So let's begin with today's lecture. Right. So we start with AIIB, or Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. As I told you that IMF and World Bank were a result of the efforts of Western countries, especially US and UK. So these two countries have their major say in these institutions. Even the voting rights of US is much, much greater than of India and China. According to ADB, or Asian Development Bank report, till 2020, Asia needs 800 billion of infrastructure investment. 800 billion of infrastructure related investment. And ADB also said that ADB itself can only provide 100 billion US dollars in this effort. It can only finance up to the limit of 100 billion. 10 billion US dollars. But the requirement is much, much higher, which is of 800 billion. So how will this 790 billion US dollars gap will be fulfilled? It was a major requirement. Even the institutions like IMF and World Bank, they're not interested in lending to the Asian projects or Asian infrastructure of such high amount. Therefore, Chinese President Xi Jinping came up with the idea to set up a multilateral development bank to lend money exclusive to Asian countries or to Asian projects. So even when China had this idea, there must have been many motives, right? So what was the motive behind China? China has a huge forex reserve. As we all know, in past 70 years, China has developed tremendously. It has become an export-oriented industry. It has vast forex reserves. Even after being such economic powerhouse, it was not having say in IMF or World Bank. So China has a huge forex reserve and obviously it wants to make profit out of it. After formation of AIIB, the authorized capital was of 100 billion US dollars, and China was willing to finance 50% of that. So when China will finance so much of money, obviously in Asian projects, it will earn interest out of that, and from that it will earn huge profit and it will distribute it to its shareholders. So that was primarily one of the motives. AIIB will also finance the rail, road and port infrastructure along with Asian Silk Route. So China, as I told you in previous lectures, that China is trying to once again develop the ancient Silk Route, be it maritime Silk Route or land Silk Route, one belt, one road. So China was actually trying to have an institution like AIIB and to have a major say in that. And similarly, when AIIB will be formed, many Asian countries will be part of that institution. And thus, China, through its soft skill and through not using much of the muscular power, will be actually helping the other Asian countries and trying to win their trust so that they may not object in its One Belt, One Road project, in Silk Route project. And in this way, China will be able to connect once again Asia with Europe and will have a major say in international business. And it will help China to become one of the superpowers of future. So apart from making loads of profit, AIIB will also help and it will finance the China's interest of One Belt, One Road, maritime Silk Route and road link projects across Asia. So another important fact was that IMF, World Bank was primarily dominated by US and UK. ADB or Asian Development was primarily dominated by US and Japan. So China was trying to counter the influence of these major economies. As we all know that even after exerting lots of influence and trying to have inroads into IMF and World Bank in policy making, the voting share of China as well as India was increased marginally. And they did not have much, and they could not exert much of the influence on these institutions. So, and China was having a very, very great plans or bullish plans for its future. So obviously it was in a hurry to no more further negotiate and exert and have influence in these two major institutions like IMF, ADB or say for example World Bank, China came up with the idea of having the parallel institutions like AIIB. So IMF was not reforming its governance structure for a long time. Even after governance, they had a very poor reforms as per Chinese needs. The size of Chinese economy has almost become same as that of US. Yet Chinese voting power was much less, almost 1/3 of Chinese voting power of American voting power. In ADB also, China was having hardly 15%. So to counter the influence or hegemony of ADB, IMF, World Bank, obviously China came up with an idea of AIIB and later on also BRICS Bank, which had become NDB. So increasing the influence of Chinese yuan and expanding the influence of Chinese yuan to counter the influence of US dollar, and obviously the basic idea was to establish the Chinese supremacy. So let's come again to Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and little bit understand how it came into existence and when did it came, where is the headquarter, and small other details. So basically, as we have come to understand that Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, what is it? It is basically a multilateral development bank that aims to support the building of infrastructure in Asia Pacific region specifically. It was formed on 16th January 2016. It formally came into business, was open for business, and officially all the legal aspects were completed by 25th December 2015. Headquarters is in Beijing, China, and region served is Asia and Asia Pacific. And almost by now we have 102 members of AIIB. How is AIIB structured? There are three levels of structure there, organization structure. First, there are board of governors, then board of directors, and then the president. Board of governors is of course the highest decision-making body. Voting power is decided according to shareholding of the countries, of different member countries. And shareholding is basically decided by the size of the GDP of the country. So more the size of the GDP of the country, more the voting power straight away. This is not in the case of IMF or World Bank. We see that the China's GDP or size of economy is much more of that of UK and other countries, but they have higher share of voting power, right? So they have tried to rectify this in AIIB structure. Voting powers was according to shareholding, and shareholding is according to GDP of the country. Board of directors who are all there? Board of governors will elect these directors. So they will decide the budget and submit report to board of governors, obviously. President basically whoever is elected is the president of board of directors. Person should be of long experience and ethical integrity in banking, finance, economics. So he must have a credible history of service. They will obviously, the person who is the president will be selected based on the merit, and day-to-day firefighting will be executed under the president. A responsible day-to-day administration, hire and fire staff. He can appoint vice president to reduce his workload. Shareholding and voting power. So total authorized capital was around 100 billion US dollars, and China was funding around 50% of that. China said that it will slowly try to dilute and give more share to other countries. But in starting, it was having 50% of financing the AIIB. So it was the major shareholder. China said that They don't want to be a single majority shareholder, and in future they will gradually dilute Chinese shareholding when new members join in. Obviously, as we have discussed in last slide, shareholding to be decided on GDP adjusted for PPP or purchasing power parity. Accordingly, China was the largest and India was the second largest shareholder. So India was very keen to participate in AIIB. At that time, India was trying to balance the Asian policy as well as Western countries' policy. India was also very frustrated with the reforms made at IMF and World Bank. India was not getting proper share or say in these two major institutions. So India supported China in its effort of AIIB and became the second largest shareholder in AIIB. But when India officially joined AIIB, many experts said that there are positives of that also. Many experts criticize also government for that. So they were both sides of the arguments. So finally, there are some pro arguments and there are some anti or negative arguments for India joining AIIB. So first, let's see how India will benefit from AIIB. The first major point was when India was not getting a proper treatment at IMF or World Bank, then India should have looked towards AIIB in a positive way. So that was one of the major arguments was by the supporters of India joining AIIB. So something is better than nothing. 12th five-year plan says that we need $1 trillion investment in infrastructure. That was a report by 12th five-year plan. While the government of Prime Minister Modi had been relaxing FDI, was promoting Make in India. So we needed more capital for development of India, obviously. Prime Minister Modi was meeting different heads of the states of other countries like Japan, America, and $1 trillion was a huge amount. But still, we see that even if $1 trillion was not coming directly in terms of loans, but out of that, a large portion or few billion dollars did come through AIIB or BRICS, which will be BRICS Bank or NDB Bank, which we'll be going to study in further slides. So India thought that something was better than nothing. When IMF or World Bank was not giving at all, then AIIB was really funding many of the major projects. So something was better than nothing. That was one of the major points. Another was that AIIB was giving a much more voting power compared to IMF or World Bank. India was the second largest subscriber or shareholder of AIIB. Besides, there are more than 100 members of AIIB, and India was having great relations with many countries, if not with China. So collectively, India thought that having many good members, many friendly members in AIIB, and having second largest shareholder and being second largest shareholder in AIIB was a very good idea. So India went ahead with AIIB. Third major point was Africa will benefit. Since AIIB will loan to Asian countries, it slightly reduces World Bank pressure to finance Asian projects. Then World Bank can divert more funds to Africa. And when Africa will develop, then of course, Indian export will increase, terror network will weaken, and sea piracy which goes along the coast of Somalia and other similar countries will reduce. And in this way also India will benefit. So this was a great idea. And Indian policymakers were right in their thinking that when AIIB will concentrate on Asia, then World Bank will have less pressure and it can concentrate on Africa. And when it will concentrate on Africa, African countries will develop. And when they will develop, they will have demand of products or raw material or any goods or service from other countries. So that will be a good market for India. And when India will export to those countries, African countries, obviously it will be good for India. Competition. In terms of competition, there will be obviously competition for borrowing from institutions like AIIB and ADB, IMF and other similar institutions. So countries will have many options and not only option of IMF or ADB or other or similar institution like European Bank and other similar institutions. So when there will be competition with coming of AIIB or later on NDB, then obviously these institutions will give cheaper loans. So when they will give cheaper loans, it will be obviously good for the member countries to borrow from the institution which will lend at cheaper rate. So ADB often was accused of slow moving bureaucracy, gives loan too late and with too many strings attached. There are too many riders by ADB or Asian Development Bank when it gives loan to the countries. China said that AIIB will have clean, simplified and efficient bureaucracy. It will provide loan quickly, efficiently. Even we see that in 2014, under the feeling of competition from AIIB, World Bank President Jim Yong Kim started reducing his staff. Internal restructuring was there. Salaries and perks were slightly rationalized. So people began to think that AIIB was a great competition and everything was not so hunky-dory at World Bank, right? So the entry of AIIB further increased competition and it catalyzed reforms in other multinational institutions and it reduced rates, EMIs and other similar things in other multinational institutions. So obviously when India will go to other institutions for borrowing, it will get loans at cheaper rate. So all these aspects were very positive for India. And India obviously supported AIIB. There were many negative arguments or anti-arguments by experts who said that India won't much benefit from AIIB. So one of the arguments came from American side and it said that AIIB objectives were not very clear. They were very ambiguous. They are not clearly stating whom they will fund and whom they will not fund. What instruments are on the plate of AIIB. So all these things Americans were saying that it's not clear from AIIB side. So AIIB was lacking transparency. That was one of the main arguments by American economic experts. So they were trying to say that India won't benefit because China is the major shareholder and AIIB is not very clear what it's going to do with $100 billion US, whether they will fund or whether they will not fund, it's not very clear. Another argument which was floated was bogus countries will benefit. In past, China had loaned to countries without good governance or respect for human rights or functional democracy or environmental safety. Pakistan, Myanmar, and many African countries have been benefited by loans or grants from China. So that was a major fear which was floated by economists who were criticizing AIIB. And they said that when undemocratic, so-called undemocratic countries like Pakistan will have got fund from China in previous years, then obviously China, which was a major shareholder and major voting power at AIIB, it will influence AIIB to loan to bogus countries like Pakistan and other autocratic regimes. And obviously that will be detrimental for Indian policymakers and India. But there have been counter arguments for this also. ADB and IMF have also done that many times in the past. So, but that was an argument that was floated. Another third argument which was floated was China doesn't listen to others. So, July 2014, South Korea has proposed that we should stop AIIB headquarters in Seoul to reduce the fears of US, Japan, and Western powers. So, but President Jinping was very adamant of setting up AIIB, and then finally he set up the headquarters in Beijing. So there is always a fear of Chinese hegemony, and the Chinese don't listen to member countries or other countries in a positive way. So that was a major argument which the criticizers of AIIB were trying to promote. So now let's come to New Development Bank. So New Development Bank is another most important bank which was the result of the efforts of developing nations, especially Asian developing nations like India and China. There is a concept of BRIC nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and later on being added by South Africa, which came to be known as BRICS. These were those countries who made rapid strides in economic development in 1990s. So it became very essential for these countries to have their say at international level, at global forum. And obviously, as has been discussed earlier, that not much major reforms were being made at the level of IMF and World Bank. So BRICS countries came up with the idea of New Development Bank. But an interesting thing was that where AIIB was primarily the brainchild of China, New Development Bank or NDB was basically the brainchild of India. New Development Bank, formerly which was known as BRICS Development Bank, is a multilateral development bank established by BRICS countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. NDB or New Development Bank, basically it came in, was discussed in 5th BRICS Summit held in Durban, South Africa in 2013. And finally in 2014, it was established at Fortaleza, Brazil in 6th BRICS Summit. It is again headquartered in China, in Shanghai, and member countries of course are only these 5 major economic powerhouses: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The idea was floated basically at the 4th BRICS Summit in 2012 by India, which was held in New Delhi. BRICS leader agreed to set up Development Bank in 5th BRICS Summit, as we have discussed. And on 15 July 2014, the first day of 6 BRICS Summit held in Fortaleza, Brazil, the BRICS states signed the agreement on New Development Bank. On 11th May 2015, KV Kamath, who was, of course, the head of ICICI Bank, India, was appointed as the president of the bank. On 21st December 2016, the NDB signed its first loan agreement. NDB received AA plus credit rating from S&P Global Rating and Fitch Ratings. As of March 2019, the bank announced to issue loans up to $40 billion by 2022 in South Africa. So we are seeing that NDB has also done a commendable job right from its inception. And the best part of NDB was that India had a very major role in NDB, New Development Bank. This slide basically shows the countries who are part of NDB. From South American continent, we have Brazil. From African continent, we have South Africa. From Asia, we have China and India. And of course, from Eurasia, we have Russia. This is the photograph of KV Kamath, Shri KV Kamath, who was the first president of NDB. And later on, from May 2020, the new president have been appointed. He is Mr. Marcos Prado from Brazil. And yeah, so what are the objectives of NDB? The bank aims to contribute to development plans established nationally through projects that are socially, environmentally, and economically sustainable. Taking this into account, NDB has set up its objectives. The first major objective was to promote infrastructure and sustainable development projects with a significant development impact in member countries. So this was a very, very major objective, and as we see the work of NDB, we see that it has actually stuck to its objective, and it has actually promoted the infrastructure and has invested in sustainable development projects. Another objective was to establish an extensive network of global partnership with other multilateral development institutions and national development banks. Third objective was to build a balanced project portfolio, giving a proper respect to their geographic location, financing requirements, and other factors. We already know who are the members of BRICS of NDB, New Development Bank. Of course, it was Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa only. Bank's article of agreement specifies that all members of United Nations could be members of the bank. However, the share of BRICS nation can never be less than 55% of voting power. So obviously, there can be many members who can join NDB, but 55% of the voting power will always rest with these 5 countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Expanding the NDB's membership is considered by some experts to be crucial to its long-term development by helping to boost the bank's business growth. According to bank's general strategy 2017 to 2021, the NDB plans to expand membership gradually so as not to overly strain its operational and decision-making capacity. So this is basically the snapshot of country shareholding, and almost all countries have equal number of shares. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa have equal number of shares. Voting rights is also same, and authorized capital is also equal. Let's come to projects. which are being handled by or which are being financed by NDB. According to bank's general strategy, sustainable infrastructure development is at the core of NDB's operational strategy from 2017 to 2021, and the bank will dedicate about 2/3 of financing commitment in its first 5 years to this area. Another project was developing renewable energy sources. Okay, developing renewable energy sources. This was one of the main aspects where the NDB had financed projects. So we see that, yeah, renewable energy sources. So energy wise, we see that of the total investment in different projects, 30% of the investment has been done in energy, which is renewable energy sources. Then comes transport, then comes water sanitation and flood protection, then comes transport, then come urban and social areas of projects, and then cleaner production, right? So we see that in all major projects related to sustainable development, NDB has contributed immensely. NDB has been news for many different reasons, obviously for many good reasons. NDB, or New Development Bank of BRICS countries, has fully disbursed $1 billion as an assistance loan to India to help to contain the spread of COVID-19 and reduce human, social, and economic losses caused by coronavirus pandemic. It was again in the news because Chief Executive Officer of NDB, Ms. Loreto Morapedi, had revealed that part of its business continuity plan, the bank will reposition as agri-bank, because all the member countries, we are developing countries, we are primarily agri-based countries, and therefore it will project itself as agri-based agri-bank in future. And also it was in news because on April 20th, 2020, the 5th annual meeting was held virtually on virtual platform. So we see that NDB was a major effort by BRICS countries, and India had a very good experience with NDB, and it has a great say in NDB. Along with NDB and AIIB, India has been member of many multilateral institutions, but NDB and AIIB had been a major institutions which had helped India to position itself as a global financial power in front of the world. So we can say that after studying major institutions like IMF, World Bank, AIIB and NDB, that all institutions have in some way or the other promoted the basic philosophy of encouraging international business, and all institutions in their respective time zones in some way or the other have been instrumental in promoting international business. So this was the topic of AIIB and NDB. Thank you for listening to this lecture. Thank you, and thank you once again.